Hello everybody and welcome to the Psychogenopedia. Here you will learn about the genetics of psychological disorders. By the way, many related topics in evolutionary psychology will be discussed. Have you ever wondered how much your brother's finger looks like your grandpa's? Or how different are your siblings' behaviors? Or why twins end up having different traits? Shouldn't they be the same in all aspects? You take after your great-grandmother in stubbornness. How is it possible even though you have never met her? Why did you, but not your brother, become bald? You are very introverted. How come your sister is very extroverted? It's like cousin is addicted to lies. My uncle was all the same. His father has ADHD. He is suffering from schizophrenia. Don't these sentences ring any bells? These questions all have something to do with genetics, evolution, and psychology. Genetics is the science that involves studying genes and heredity, including topics such as how they function in cells and organisms, or how particular characteristics or traits are passed from parents to offspring through variations in DNA sequence. Different traits from person to person are influenced by genes. Genes are the basic functional and physical unit of heredity. They carry information that affects the health, appearance, and even personality. A gene is a section of DNA. Most genes are the same across all humans, but less than 1% is slightly different in each person. All human traits are determined by a complicated interaction between inherited genes expression and environment. A multifactorial or complex disease is caused by both genetic changes and environmental factors. Most psychiatric disorders and chronic diseases are complex conditions. DNA is a dynamic and adaptable molecule which is able to change under particular situation in response to the environmental circumstances. Depending how a specific change modifies our genetic makeup, it can present new characteristics in harmless, helpful, or even hurtful ways. It is the basic tool of diversity of life, evaluation, and survival of the fittest. In other words, organisms best adjusted to their environment are the most successful in surviving and reproducing. This adjustment is provided by changes in DNA. Okay, now let's talk a little about evolution. People in less sunny areas gradually have lost the pigments of their skin and eyes in order to absorb more vitamin D of the insufficient sunlight and therefore become blonde. The Homo sapiens or wise human first appeared in Africa and then began to migrate and gradually spread throughout the world. Other types of humans including Neanderthals became extinct. Could it be that some of our bad behavior have evolutionary and survival purposes? Such as anger outburst or yearning sugary food. That is, at some point in the evolution of caveman, these behaviors have led to superiority in natural selection and survival consequently, but nowadays, with the civilization and human settlement, those behaviors are awkward and annoying, so we try to get rid of them, our trump cards for survival during evolution. This is evolution and how it works. Evolution helps to understand the living world around and its history. Simply put, biological evolution is the change in inherited traits over successive generations in populations of organisms. This comprises microevolution, for instance, changes in the frequency of DNA versions within a population across generations, to macroevolution, such as the descent of different species from a same ancestor down through generations. Evolution of organisms is not simply a matter of changes over time. But they are not count as biological evolution as long as they do not involve descent with inherited modification. Darwin brought up his treatise on the origin of species in his article Natural Selection. To cut a long story short, natural selection or survival of the fittest means a higher chance of living longer and more reproduction due to specific variations caused by alternation in DNA. Thus, these given advantages can be transmitted to succeeding generations and remain in the population. Later, evolution has been redefined as the action of natural selection on genetic variations in whole populations. For example, the brain is supposed to analyze and process received information from the environment, and the way it processes information is adjusted through evolution and natural selection. The brain does this through the pathways built by neurons. Simply put, a pathway indicates a group of neurons connecting and working together to do a particular task, like recognizing received information from surroundings and reacting to it. Through learning, your neural system is forming new paths. These neural pathways are essential for repeating behaviors you've already learned or response to a similar occasion you've already experienced. When an individual does something new or he is exposed to the situation he's never faced before, he has no pathway for the specific behavior and response. As soon as he starts to engage in the behavior or handling the circumstance, neurons start to get together and transmitting the information. More pathways can be developed by having diverse experiences. Furthermore, existing ones will become stronger by repetition of the behavior and it converts easier to do. So the more diverse our pathways, the more challenges we're able to overcome. Some genetic variations can accelerate this process. So the way an animal or person behaves in response to specific circumstances or stimulus is also influenced with DNA variation and the environment the subject is living in. In this way, psychologists recognize unpractical pathways and abnormal behaviors in their clients based on the mental health condition and growing environment, then help the client to develop pragmatic new ones via the procedure just has been explained. Take for example treating trust issue. Group therapy is a proper choice since a common procedure in group therapy intends to help participants learn to trust others in the group and then in the society. Another example is using CBT techniques to teach people with ADHD new skills to be more disciplined and less stressed. Most people are naturally terrified by wild animals or even their images. It's maybe rooted in our ancestors' avoidance from predators in the wild. That was crucial to survive such like situations and has remained in our genes. Some individuals are more anxious and pessimistic. And this is a repetitive pattern in their family. Sometimes genetic variations can be influenced much more by transmitted experiences from ancestors or growing up in a certain culture. Trust was important in a primitive community where people should rely on each other to survive and stay safe. Perhaps it is the reason for disapproving of dishonesty from evolutionary psychology perspective. These are some examples of behaviors explained by evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology is not aimed at describing mental health conditions, but providing insight into the reasons why some people have struggles to handle specific challenges, or why some challenges are more likely to be developed in their life. From developmental standpoint, what is the cause of a negative trait like anxiety? These can describe the reasons for some people's behaviors and thoughts are slightly affected by certain conditions. As an instance, children with ADHD are more likely to exhibit hyperactivity symptoms after getting sugar. Displaying phobic responses is another way to investigate the evolutionary perspective on mental health. Dr. Michael J. McGrath, a licensed psychiatrist, believes many phobias can be traced back to survival-oriented fears. Although some of them have been beneficial for us during evolution, nowadays, these phobias intensify fears and have adverse effect on daily life. Acluophobia, or the intense fear of darkness, can be traced back to our ancestors who won the survival race. As human is disabled in seeing well in darkness, those primitives who weren't afraid of darkness were more prone to be hunted by predators at night. It is said that behaviors are brain responses to gathered information from both internal and external environment. Consequently, understanding the behavior or thought pattern means understanding how that information is processed. These pathways have been influenced over time by the environment our ancestors lived in. We inherit many pathways our ancestors had developed in order to handle particular problem they encounter. For handling modern-day challenges and given current environments, some evolutionary behaviors are no longer beneficial. The brain is able to gather information, make comparison, analyze and recognize or create patterns according to the framework it's inherited. Empathy as an ancient beneficial trait evolutionary made its way to us and still is advantageous. Evolutionary inclination toward empathy encourages us to put ourselves in other people's shoes and help. Both in the ancient and modern societies, it's an empowering means to expand our community and members of our tribe. Does it make sense? In the next episodes, we are going to consider how our behavior is affected by modern life issues like social media and technology, besides evaluating each psychiatric trait more close from this approaches. Stay tuned.